It's another day and it's another story here on the Madison Story Slam YouTube channel. On today's video, we're going to hear from Jessica Regan.
And I looked at my brother immediately, expecting to laugh, because that's not funny, but it also couldn't possibly have been real.
Hey everybody, welcome once again to our lovely little YouTube channel here where we put videos up of people telling stories from our live events that we host, in Madison, Wisconsin at the Wilmar Center. The third Saturday of every month, you can find us there. And this story is a great story. It's a tough story, but it was very well told. It actually won the Story Slam. It was the top voted story of the evening, and it really is kind of a tough one. Our theme was breaking point, and it was a lot of tough stories that night. It was hard. It was hard to be the MC of that Story Slam because I kind of look at my job as to get up and be funny and maybe poke fun at some of the stories. Jessica, who's telling this story, is a great friend of mine. Met her through Story Slam, and this story is about a pretty touchy subject. I'll just go ahead and tell you, it's a story about suicide, and that's the thing about Story Slam that's really unique and awesome is a lot of people think that it's just funny stories, that it's just people getting up to tell stories that they think are going to make people laugh. A lot of people come to Story Slam, to laugh, and I understand that. And I understand why, because, most people, their experience with storytelling is, around the dinner table with friends or family, and you're telling stories to make each other laugh, and you're there to have a good time. And so we believe in that, but we also believe that the serious stories are just as important. And we believe that when people tell serious stories, when people are brave enough to come on stage and really open up their chest and let us see what's inside, and they say, here's my heart, I hope you see it, and I hope you help me carry it. That's what we believe happens. Our motto is building community through storytelling, and that's kind of how you do that. You hear each other's stories, and you say, I'm with you, I'm walking with you, and thank you so much for telling that story. I've learned from it, and I cry with you, I rejoice with you, all these different things that we do through storytelling. So that's why we love Madison Story Slam. Maybe you're new to this whole kind of experience, and these videos are your first time getting into it. You can find us the third Saturday of every month, like I said, at the Wilmar Center in Madison, Wisconsin. And if you'd like to see us grow even more, you can visit patreon.com/Madison Story Slam. All right, that's enough from me. Here's Jessica.
Please put your hands together for Jessica Regan.
My dad was the toughest man I've ever known. He was a quiet, hardworking dairy farmer, and he didn't have a lot, but he gave us everything that he had. He gave me my work ethic and my love of nature and my dimples. He also gave me a couple of really great older siblings, and family really meant the world to him. We always had dinner together as a whole family every night growing up. And when we'd finish eating, my dad would change back into his barn clothes and be ready to go finish the evening milking. And just as about when he was about to leave the house, he would stand at the front door, and my mom would call for us kids, "Kids, your father's leaving." It sounded just like that. Same line, same routine every single night. And once we heard my mom say, "Kids, your father's leaving," we would race to the front door to stand in a line and give him a kiss goodbye before he went back to work. So Novembers are really special. They are a reminder of the great times that we had as a family growing up on the farm, the fall harvest season, deer hunting season, which just started today, and even football season. I'm not a big sports fan, but we loved watching the Packers games as a family growing up. Novembers are also really important to me because these days there's also a big focus on men's health and well-being. My dad was the toughest man I'd ever known, and that was part of the problem because, like a lot of really tough men, I think he had learned and had been socialized to suppress his emotions and not talk about it and to not ask for help. And so he suffered silently for I don't even know how long. And Novembers are also really hard because it was a November day, 18 years ago now, that my dad reached his breaking point. This is the sweater I was wearing that day. I've held on to it for many years. And it was a Sunday that started off just like any other. My mom and I had gone to church together that morning. I remember coming home feeling so spiritually strong that day, which I think ended up being pretty important. And my brother was home from college, so we were getting ready to watch the Packers game as a family. My brother was on the couch watching the pregame stuff. My mom was in the kitchen making lunch. She had fish in the oven and rice and broccoli on the stovetop. And I was kind of moving through the house collecting loads of laundry because I liked the idea of doing laundry more than I liked the idea of sitting in front of the TV watching Packers. But I was still paying attention to the things that were going on around me and checking in and that sort of thing. It was getting really close to lunchtime and game time, and it was strange that my father hadn't come back up from the barn yet, so my mom went out to look for him. And when she came back into the living room, she had a look on her face that I'll never forget. She was breathing quickly and kind of shallowly, and she had what I can only imagine was probably the toughest parenting moment ever when she looked at me and my brother and said, "I don't know how to tell you this, but your dad is in the milk house with a gunshot wound in his head." And I looked at my brother immediately, expecting to laugh, because that's not funny, but it also couldn't possibly have been real. And when I saw the fear in his face, I realized that it was no joke. And I asked my mom, who could have wanted to hurt Dad? Was it Uncle Bob? We had seen his truck come and go from the farm a little bit earlier. And she said, no, this looks like it was self-inflicted. And that didn't make any sense to me at all. I didn't know how to recognize warning signs if there had been any, and I just stumbled around for a bit in disbelief. I remember leaving the house and going down towards the barn and got about halfway there before realizing I didn't want to see it. I couldn't look, and besides, we had to go. The ambulances had already arrived, and so I went back into the house and to my laundry piles, and I grabbed this sweater back out of the laundry pile, and I threw it on, and we were ready to go to the hospital. We followed the ambulance there. They ended up flying my dad to another hospital about an hour's drive away, and we spent a lot of time in that hospital over the next 2 weeks. He was in a coma in the intensive care unit and never woke up from that. It was a Sunday morning, November 19th, 2000, that the hospital called home and said, "You might want to get here pretty quick. We're not sure how much longer he's going to last." And so we got there as soon as we could, but sure enough, when we walked in, the nurse said, "I'm so sorry, but he's gone." And so this familiar line from my childhood, this "kids, your father's leaving," had suddenly morphed into this reality that my father had left. Past tense. Permanently, without any explanation, suddenly he had just left. And I think challenging moments like that, especially because I didn't get a chance to run up to him and say goodbye and run in a little line like we used to. Challenging moments can change you forever, and I was left facing the work of who I was going to be moving forward and what version of myself. My dad's breaking point was the point at which I started breaking too. And for me, time is not something that's really done much healing. It's changed things, and it's different, I wouldn't say better. But the way I see it is that the more time that goes by, the longer he's been gone and the more that he's missed. I've experienced every significant milestone in my life through this lens of dadlessness. And the only thing harder than being sad sometimes is being sad when you're supposed to be happy. So my 16th birthday, my sweet 16, was the day after his funeral. When my 4x800 track relay team broke the high school record at the home conference meet my senior year, he wasn't in the stands cheering for me like he would have been. And he missed my 3 graduation ceremonies over the years. I didn't get a daddy-daughter dance at my wedding. And he's never going to meet this grandbaby on the way, who I pray to God inherits his dimples and his work ethic and his love of nature. It's taken a lot of years and a lot of work, but I realized that my dad's breaking point was also the point at which I started growing and changing and healing in a way that I never could have imagined. Before my dad died by suicide, I was your average teenage girl living life at the surface level. I like to think now that I'm a bit more compassionate, reflective, able to really find the joy in life, make meaningful connections with people and with moments. more educated and unafraid of mental health issues. I've learned a lot about grief over the years and kind of how it can show up in weird, unexpected ways sometimes, how to watch out for that. So today, my grief has been showing up in a little bit of a trembling voice and tears throughout the day. 2 years ago in November, my grief showed up as this impulsive decision to get a semicolon tattoo in honor of my dad and to mark that moment in my life where I lived half of my life with him and half of it without him. And sometimes grief shows up as these terrible, what you might call daddy issues that I'm still sorting out and learning how to navigate, but I feel like I'm doing better. And so there's a lot of good that I feel like I've been able to take from this. I recognize that healing from a suicide loss is a lifelong journey, and it's one that I've come to accept. I have held on to my grief because I find that it's there lurking anyway, and grief is really just all the love you have for someone that you have nowhere else to put it. My friend Molly described it really beautifully once. She said, grief seems to be that only thing that's connecting you to the thing that matters so much that losing it did this to you. And I found a lot of comfort in that. So it's been a bit of a long and bumpy journey. And even though my dad left, and he left too soon and too suddenly, he also left me with a lot of really great things to be grateful for. He continues to teach me, even though he's not around. I've learned how strong I am, how strong I have been, how strong I'll have to continue to be. And if somehow in my grief I'm able to become that person that he raised me to be, that'll be the most important way that I honor him. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. So something I love about Story Slam is that people come here, I think most people that come expecting to laugh because it's just kind of the fact of Story Slam is that a lot of people, it's not just this, it's the fact of storytelling that for most of us, we experience storytelling around the dinner table with our friends and families, especially around this time of year, Thanksgiving. You get together with people you love and you share stories, and usually those stories are funny. But what I love about what we do here is that we give a space for people to come and just say, hey, like, this is what I'm going through this month, today, right now, this second, and like, we accept it, and we all get to hear that and learn from it. And maybe there's people here who've been through something very similar, and you get to heal from that story. You hear that story and it brings a sense of healing. I know it does for me. So once again, Jessica, thank you so much for being brave and sharing that story.